Hello guys, welcome to another class of Unity, and on this class we're going to continue talking about operations inside of Unity, but at this time we're not going to talk about arithmetic operations. We're going to talk about other kind of operations that is required in order that we can communicate with Unity. So yeah, we had math operation on last class. I'm going to delete this script right here. And I'm going to create another script because our operation today is going to be a little bit different. So I'm going to create C# script and I'm going to talk about logical operation. Okay, you can name it any kind of name. I'm going to double click here. Yep. All right, I'm going to close this one. Nope. Amazing. So first of all, I need to have that in your head is clear that the communication that we have with the computer, it's totally Boolean. So you remember the variable that we had before, it's a bool variable, and it has as the answer as possible values true or false. So imagine that we have a variable called result. So for example, bool result. It needs to be true. Okay, just let me change my keyboard. All right, true or false. It doesn't have any other kind of value possible for this kind of variable. It only recognizes true or false statement. That's why it's Boolean, because it's binary. So the way that we communicate with the computer, and actually the way that the script is going to communicate with Unity, it's only by true or false statements. So we can only have this kind of answer from the computer. So every time that we're going to communicate with Unity, we are going to communicate through true or false answers. So what's going on is that I'm going to ask Unity or the computer some logical questions, and the computer will answer me true or false. Of course, true if the whatever I ask is true, and false if it's not true, of course, if it's false. So all the communication that we're going to have from now on with the computer is going to be a Boolean variable. That is important because I can save that answer inside of a Boolean variable because their answer is Boolean, it's the same type. So all the questions that I'm going to make today, I'm going to save inside of result. So it's going to be very, very similar to what we have before on our last class with arithmetic operation, but this time it's not going to be a math operation. It's not going to be like 1 + 1. The operation is going to be a little bit different, and then we're going to save that operation answer inside of result. That's a Boolean variable. Okay? Alright, so this operation that we talk, they are relational operation. Okay, so it's a little bit different. What is relational operation? So relational operation are the relationship between two values or two variables or one variable and another value. And then between the relation of them, we can have a true or false statement. Okay, maybe it sounds a little bit confusing, so I'm going to write down right here. So for example, imagine that I'm going to create, first of all, I'm going to make this Boolean public so I can see them inside of Unity. And I'm not going to give them a value right now. I'm going to close this and it's going to be empty. I'm going to have one variable called public, again, int number 1, and another variable public int number 2. Okay, so we have three different values, variables: result, number 1, and number 2. So inside of start, I'm going to ask a question to Unity, and I'm going to save inside of result. So result will be equal, we'll receive the answer of, and right now I'm going to show to you guys the relationship, the relational operation that we're going to use. The first of them is, I'm going to comment this, is equal. That's the question. So equal, equal. Okay, so basically I'm going to compare two different variables It doesn't need to be a variable, to be honest. It can be any kind of information. It doesn't need to be int as well. It can be any kind of variable. Okay, so I'm going to compare number 1, then equal, and number 2. Of course, semicolon to finish the operation. This equal is different from this. You can see that it's doubled. When you make double equal, you are using the relational operation. If you make only one equal, you are saying that this is receiving this. Okay, so they are different. Just to be a little bit more clear, what I'm going to make is use parentheses. Okay, you don't need to use parentheses, but I'm going to use them right now just so it keeps clear for you that this part doesn't have anything to do with this part right here. Okay, this is the operation that we have, similar to our arithmetic operation. And this part is basically receiving the answer. Okay, so basically we have a variable number 1 and a variable number 2. And what I'm asking to Unity is number 1 is equal to number 2. Unity will answer to me true or false. And then this true or false information will be saved inside of result. And then I can see inside of result. Okay, I'm gonna save this right now and let's test it inside of Unity. So, all right, I have this script right here. I'm not gonna, we deleted them. That's why you have this. I'm gonna remove the component and put this script right here. Okay, so right now result can be false or true, depending if it's checked. If it's checked, it's true. And then what I'm going to make, I'm gonna leave it false. Okay, you can see that this will change depending on the information that we have on number 1 and number 2. Number 1 is 0 because it's empty on script, so Unity will automatically say that's 0. And number 2 is also 0, so we have 0 on both. So they are equal, and result needs to be true. So this will need to check when I play the game. So let's do it. If I play, check. Okay, so yeah, that's true. If they weren't equal, like let's say that number 1 is equal to 1 and number 2 is equal to 0, they are different, they are not equal, then result will be false because they are not equal. So if I save and play, you see that it's false. It doesn't check because they are not equal. Okay? So basically, this is the first relational operation that we know. Equal, or you can say is equal. So number 1 is equal to 2. Again, it does not need to be a variable. It can be a number like 40. Number 1 is equal to 40, that's the result. And then if I put 1, it's not gonna work because 1 is not equal to 40. But if I put 40, it will be true. Yeah, because that's the value right there that is equal. Okay, so that's the way that we are communicating with Unity through this kind of true or false answers from Unity. Okay, so we have more signs. We have more than only is equal. I'm gonna divide with semicolon right here. The next one that we're going to see is it's different. And it's very similar to is equal. The only difference is that it starts with exclamation point and equal. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm just gonna change this real quick with is different. And that's going to be true if that's different. So any value that number 1 is different than 40 will be true. If it's 40, it's going to be false. It makes sense. I'm asking, hey, this number is different than 40. If it's different, it's true. That's different than 40. If it's not different, if it's equal, it's going to be false. I'm going to remove this 40 right here. For now, I'm going to put again our number 2 so we can test with different information inside of Unity Editor. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to go, yeah, they are equal right now. So even if I mark true in the beginning, when I play the game, they are going to be false because they are not different. They are equal. And if they are different, I can put any information right here. I'm going to remove this. And they are going to be true. Okay, if they are equal, false. All right, so is equal and is different works actually in the opposite way, but they are very similar the way that they behave. We have another one that is called greater. Greater I'm gonna remove this. It's only one sign, and basically is asking if number 1 is greater than number 2, and if that is greater than number 2, it's going to be true. If that's not, it's going to be false. So I'm gonna save this, and I'm gonna go to Unity again and test this one. So if I play the game right now, number 1 and number 5, they are equal. So number 1 is not greater than number 2, they are equal, so the result will be false. But if I change the number 1 to, let's say, 6, we will have a true, because number 1 now is greater than number 2. Okay, and if for some reason they are not greater, like they are less than, it's going to be false again. Okay, the next one is less than, so it's the opposite from greater. I'm gonna put the opposite sign. You always read in this direction. Okay, so when I'm reading this, I'm saying result, receive, number 1 is less than number 2, and that's going to give me an answer, and I'm gonna save on the result. Okay, so always, that's why it's greater than and it's less than, because we always read in that order. Okay, because in that case, you can also read number 2 is greater than number 1 is also going to work. But I think it's easier if you always read that way. So this is less than if you think in that direction. Okay, so let's test. Number 1 needs to be less than, and in this case, number 1 is less than 5. So I'm going to play, and you can see that it's going to be true. Right? Yeah, because it makes sense. 4 is less than 5. If I put 5, it's not gonna work, even though I press true right here, because 5 is not less than 5, they are equal. And if I put also a greater number like 6, it's not gonna work also, so false. Alright? Okay, so we have E is equal, it is different, it's greater, or it's less than. And the last two that we have, they are a mix of the greater and less than with equal. So we have it's greater than or equal, so they are the same sign, like greater or equal. So number 1 is greater or equal than number 2. So then we combine with the we equal right there. So it's one sign that works both way. So let's test with this 6 and 5. You can see that the answer is true because it makes sense. Number 1 is greater than number 2. 6 is greater than 5. If we make 5 right here, they are not greater, but they are equal. And the question that we're making, if it's greater or equal. So, true again. That's true because they are indeed equal. If they are less than, then it's not going to be true. It's going to be false because number 1 is not greater or equal than number 2. So it's false. Okay, the last one, but not least, is less than or equal. It's opposite from this. So less than or equal. I'm gonna save this. So if 4 and 5 right here, we have true. Because 4 is less than 5, it makes sense. If we put, let's say, 5, we're gonna have true, because 5 is less or equal to 5. Makes sense. If I make 6, we're going to have false. Okay, makes sense because they are indeed false. They're not greater, right? They are greater, actually they are not less or equal. Okay, so you may be thinking you have all the signs. Is it equal? Is different, greater, less than, greater or equal, less than or equal. So you can read, and there you can always ask Unity this kind of question. And you may think, oh, why would I ask Unity this kind of question? And the answer is because these variables are changing. You don't actually know how they're going to behave inside of your game. And we can make one example of this. Okay, so I'm going to delete this and I'm going to create a new variable right here named is player alive. That's a question, but it's going to be a Boolean true or false. If it's true, it means that the player is alive. If it's false, it means that the player is not alive. And I'm going to have another variable called maybe health points, and it's going to be equal to 100. Okay, so I'm gonna leave start right now. I'm gonna use a little bit update. So the thing that I'm going to use is health points. It's going to decrease every single frame. So I'm gonna put an update. And what I'm going to do is ask every single frame if player is alive. And this is going to receive health points needs to be greater than 0. Okay, because if health points is greater than 0, this is true, and is player alive is going to be true. Alright, so I'm gonna save this. Okay, so is player alive? I can even put true right here or false, doesn't really matter. Unity will answer them for me at the start of the game, and the health points will decrease every single frame. So we're gonna have one example, and pretty fast, huh? But if I put like health points equal to 1000, a little bit more time for us to see. You can see that it's alive, but then not alive anymore. Okay, so that's very important to ask this kind of questions because we don't actually know the currently information that we have inside of our variable. So health points, it's actually changing every single frame. And if you think about the health points of your player are dynamic, they are changing in the game. So sometimes you want to do something specific only when your health points is below 0 or only when your player is dead. So another example is like when to show up the game over screen. You need to see if the health points is below 0 or any other kind of information. You need to check that. Okay? And just to be clear, you always need to have this is actually works with any kind of variables. Okay, it doesn't need to be int. So one example that I can put right here is public bool password. Let me see. Enter password right. Password is right. Okay, something like this. And then we're going to have a public string. It's going to be try. It's going to be try password. All right. And then what I am going to be doing on update is basically saying that I'm not going to leave the password with a capital P, right? Only with a lowercase p. So I'm going to check if like something like password is right is going to be equal to try password equal is it equal to this is password. That's the password. Okay, if the try password is equal to this is password, this will be true. If it's not, it will be false. So we can play a little game right here with this string. So I'm gonna play the game, and it's false right here, right? I need to put some kind of word right here. It's not gonna work. But if I put this is password, then it's true. This is the password, so it's true. We can pass. If I put another D, it's not gonna be true anymore. Okay, so just keep in mind that this kind of relational operation that we saw until now, or you can use with any kind of variables. It doesn't need to be int. Int usually it's the most used when you want to do something like greater or less than, something like this. Usually it's int. And equal to other kinds, but just keep in mind that you can use all of them with all the different kinds of variables. Okay, so this works with everything. And just to finish the class, we have another kind of operational. So these are relational operation, and we have another one that is called a little bit different. They are called logical operation, and they are when we want to use more than one kind of relational operation. Okay, so I'm gonna show to you guys. There are 3 of them. They are pretty easy, but you need to understand the relational operation first. So I'm going to go with, again, with result. So public bool result, and again with different integer variables that we have. Okay, so public int number 2. All right, so we can do something like we did before, like result is equal to number 1 less than 50, let's say. What about I want a number? I want to check if the number 1 is lower than 50, but also greater than 0. How can I check two answers with only one variable like result? We can do it using logical operation. Okay, the thing is, we can use, I'm gonna change the icons right here. I'm gonna put the icons that we have for logical operation. The first one is and basically, if we have a question of a logical operation like number 1 is greater than 50, I can put and then they put another logical operation like number 1 it's lower, it's greater than 0. So and works in a way that is a little bit different. The thing is, this needs to be true and this needs to be true in order to the whole situation be true. Okay, it makes sense if you read it in English. Number 1 is less than 50 and number 1 is over than 0. So this kind of a question can be answered with true or false, yes or not. So if number 1 is lower than 50 and number 1 is higher than 0, it is true. So it's 25 per se, this is going to be true. But if one of them is not true, one of them is false, the whole answer will be false. So like number 1 is less than 50 and number 1 is greater than 0. Let's say that it's less than 50 but it's not greater than 0, something like -1, -1. This whole situation will be false. Okay, let's test it right now. So it needs to be lower than 0, lower than 50, and greater than 0, or in between 0 and 50. Okay, so we have, let's say if it's 0, it's not gonna be true. So if it's 0, it's gonna be false because it's not higher than 0, it's equal. So it needs to be, let's say, put 25. Play. True, makes sense. It's in between 0 and 50. If I put 51, false, because it's higher than 50. So in order to this result to be true, this needs to be less than 50 and over than 0. And of course you can put any kind of relational right here. It needs to, like, you can use 50. I can use like it needs to be lower than number 2 and number 2 needs to be higher than 30, and I can keep going. I don't need to stop with 2. I can put more, and number 1 needs to be higher than 40, something like this. So this will be true if all of the questions are true. So number 1 needs to be lower than number 2 needs to be higher than 30, and number 1 needs to be higher than 40. Okay, so let's try to make it true. So it needs to be higher than 30 and it needs to be higher than 40 right here, but number 1 needs to be lower than number 2. Okay, so if I put number 1 41, number 2 42, this will be true because number 1 will be higher than 40, number 2 is 42, so number 2 will be higher than 30, and number 1 will be lower than 30, number 2. So they're going to satisfy all the questions right there. So true, that's true. Okay, easy. You can go with crazy with this. You can make a lot of questions with this and. Okay, and just to show to you guys the other operation that we have and we also have another one that is or. Okay, so or works a little bit different. I'm gonna put number 1 equals to 1 or number 2 is equal to 6. Okay, so the thing is, we can read it in English like number 1 is equal than 1 or number 2 is equal than to 6. So we can have these two questions. If one of them is true, the whole answer is true. To one of them be false, to the answer be false, one of both needs to be false. Okay, so OR works in a way that if one of them is true, we already have a true result. If in order to be false, both needs to be false. So I'm gonna save this and let's test it. We have like number 1 needs to be equal to 1, number 2 needs to be equal to 6. So if we have both true, of course the answer will be true. Okay, so if I play, true. If we have one of them false, the answer is still be true because it's OR. So one of them is true, the answer will be true. So true. Okay, it doesn't really matter who. If I put this one and this 5, no, only number 1 is true, but the answer will be true. In order to have a false statement, both needs to be false in that case. So if I play, false. Okay, so in that case we have and we have OR. The last one, it's not a relational between two different relational operations. The last one is not. So basically not give the opposite answer of what we have. So not is just a exclamation point that we put before a relational operation. So the thing is, number 1 is equal than 1 is equal to 1. This will be true if number 1 is equal to 1. But as we have not, this will convert the true into false and the false into true. So if I save right here, I will have something like number 1 is equal to 1. They are equal, so it's true. But as I'm using not, the answer, the final answer will be turned into false. So if I play, we'll have false right here. So if we have a different, so number 1 is equal to 1, no, it's not, it's 0. So it's false. But as we have not before, this will be turned into true. True. Okay? So yeah guys, that's what we have today to communication. It seems a little bit strange, but that's the way that we communicate with the computer. We use relational operation and also logical operation to combine them, and then we can start making questions to Unity in order to make Unity do whatever we want inside of the game. So the communication is a little bit different, I guess, but it's not hard, it's just a little bit different. And sometimes it seems to be hard to understand just because the computer is only going to answer true or false. So that may be a little bit confusing, but don't worry, that's going to be easy. After this class, we're going to ask more and more questions to Unity, and I think you guys are going to understand it better. Okay, so just play a little bit with this, try to make some confusing relationship with those, and try to guess the answer if they are going to be true, if they are going to be false, and try to see why they are true or why they are false in this part right here. Okay, so you can go wild with this thing. So just to finish this. Okay guys, so what you think? You think this is going to be true or this is going to be false? I'm gonna let you guys guess. Just try to guess with this and play around with this concept. From next class we're going to use it a lot more. Okay, thank you very much for this class, and I hope you guys understand this part. It's going to get easier from this class and on. Don't you worry about this, we're going to use this all the time, and see you on the next class. Bye bye.